with the talk about TCU and Baylor in the offseason, maybe didn't see this one quite coming as being the game of the season in the Big 12 thus far. The backup quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, now with a full game under his belt and a win over Kansas State. Right now, Baker Mayfield in the run game for Oklahoma, playing as good as they have been all season long. And Baylor head coach Art Briles knows his football team's got a challenge in front of him.
Judging by some of the other teams that are one loss that are up there. So yeah, there's a big margin for error because, I mean, you're looking at, going into this past week, we had 4 teams in the top 15, in the Big 12. That's the reality of the situation a week ago. So we'll see how it all unfolds this week and go from there. But if you come out of this thing, undefeated with one loss, that one loss is, probably going to be to a team that's a top 10 team. And, you judge it for what it is, but let's just make sure it's judged equally across the board.
Well, Baylor's certainly hungry off of what it went through a year ago. They will be poised to play great football this week, as will Oklahoma. Remaining schedules with the FPI win chances here, week 11, 12, 13, and 14, as you look at Baylor and Oklahoma right there. That's awfully tight. Now, you don't see any 80s and 90s, and things of that nature across the board there. A lot of toss-ups in the conference. So with that being said, likelihood that the Big 12 gets a team in, and if so, does that team have to be undefeated?
I think the only one that can have a loss is Oklahoma, even though it's a bad loss to Texas, as it was in the Cotton Bowl.
Is that because of when?
It's because of who they play the next 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Oklahoma's got Baylor, they got TCU, they got Oklahoma State in consecutive weeks. They win those 3 games. I think that the committee is going to look at who is playing the best football as part of their criteria, and Oklahoma certainly will be in that conversation. And to your point, Samaje Perine is out of the witness protection program, wherever he was, the first 5 or 6 weeks. Mixon too. Yeah, he was nowhere to be found at the beginning of the season. Perine was.
We're doing that film room this week, aren't we?
The two backs set with Mixon and Perine in the backfield.
Credit Lincoln Riley, then. I guarantee you, Bob Stoops saying, we need to start, come here, we need to have a little discussion.
I'm telling you, I'll go ahead and tell you now, I think Oklahoma beats Baylor on Saturday.
And I'll go totally against you there. I think they have they'll have a shot, but not in Baylor.
Jump in, Coach. Jump in.
In Baylor,
you think so?
If it was at Oklahoma, I'd say I don't think they're going to be, it's not going to be a game in Baylor, I think.
Really? Not going to be a game? I think
it's the upset special. I think Oklahoma wins. I don't think there will be a team from the Big 12 that goes undefeated this year. There's too much parity at the end, and those guys, Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor, I mean, they're going to knock each other off.
You feel that way? So that means essentially, are you saying no Big 12 second in a row?
Yes, I'm saying no Big 12.
Free round of golf, and I get a dinner from you. How about we do that?
Why? Because he's good at golf?
Well, I know he belongs to like 9 country clubs. Big time over here.
I will gladly take Anthony to Chick-fil-A.
There you go.
Chick-fil-A on me, for sure.
Nice, Petey. Good. Raise it up.
Well, you are confident in Baylor, aren't you?
I mean, look, you got to be strong about a team. If you guys like him, I like Baylor. We'll see. I was impressed by the freshman quarterback.
Yeah,
I thought he stepped in.
He is.
I hate saying plug and play, but he went in and did his thing, right? And that's what it was.
You know what concerns me is the level of competition. And Shock Linwood last week did not seem nearly as confident with Stidham as he was with Russell. It's the same thing with Barrett and Zeke with the pitch, everything.
But that'll come. Yeah. I think that will come with reps and turns. And
the defense has eroded a little bit. They were dominant early. As they play better teams, they're getting a little less dominant. They have a freshman quarterback. He played well last week. There's no question about that. Coach said don't use the F word, meaning freshman. But the reality is Oklahoma is playing the best football right now in the Big 12. Offense, defense, and special teams. They're the one team that has a chance to hold them down a little bit. They got shell-shocked last year when Oklahoma played Baylor. I mean, it was like, wow, how do we stop them? I think they have a plan. Mike Stoops and his defense, for Bob Stoops, they're playing better this year. I'm just saying, I think it's upset special.
How's Oklahoma State not playing the best football? They beat arguably one of the better teams in the conference. I mean, we're just going to say that TCU's not good anymore?
No,
I think they had the signature win. They were the head of the pack. Now let's see who else wins some games, and then we'll see what happens when they play Oklahoma State.
Where's your pick, Tom? Come on now.
What, of Baylor, Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Well, considering...
Big fella.
I wouldn't let him get on my Oklahoma wagon because I picked Oklahoma to win the Big 12, and I wouldn't let anybody on the wagon. And then when they lost to Texas, I dropped it off on the side of the road, kind of hoping I'd come back and pick it up, and I did. And then yesterday, he picked him to beat Baylor, so I let him on my wagon.
But he built it really low to the ground.
I built it really low to the ground.
Sparks flying.
So I got to go with my preseason pick there with Oklahoma to upset
Beck is on an island here. How about that?
Yeah.
Becht Island.
Yeah, Becht Island. But hey,
no one's found it yet, but it's
well, a lot of great action coming up, certainly on the gridiron. But first, we take you to the hard court. Fairfield taking on number 1. Cooper comes in a distant third last year. Talking about a premier player. Does Corey Coleman at Baylor have a chance?
He has a chance only because they're putting up such great numbers, and it's multiple quarterbacks. So he's been the constant in terms of that offense, and he's making big plays. When he touches the ball, his touchdown percentage of catches is amazing in that regard. So and he's not you said it, he's not 6'7".
Right.
He's 6 foot tall or whatever he is, but he can make plays, and he's just unstoppable.
He's 6 foot guy. He's not a Will Fuller guy where he's going to get those 50-50 balls.
Yeah.
He is beating coverages one-on-one. He's using speed, strength, agility. You see him jumping over players. And the one thing I'll say, how does he win the Heisman? If he gets 30 touchdown catches, which he could potentially get, I would absolutely put him right ahead of any one of those running backs. 30 touchdown catches, guys. Think about that. Has it ever been done? I don't think it has. That's a lot of touchdown catches for a year. And it's not just a plug-and-play system. I mean, you couldn't try to take him away in Baylor's system on the offense, and they just don't. Let somebody else beat you. He continues to go out there being the guy and making those plays.
I get your point, too. It's more impressive to watch a 6'6" guy dunk than a 7-footer.
Exactly.
You know, Coleman's not as big as Will Fuller. But, man, I love watching Will Fuller play football. I mean, when Kaiser throws these one-on-one balls and Fuller catches every single one, I think he has a real chance to win. I think the question, obviously, is can they win the Heisman? And the answer is no. They cannot, unfortunately. It's just that we're not going to see a wide receiver do that. But those two guys we're talking about are the Blitnikoff finalists, in my opinion.
Keep in mind, if Josh Doxson hadn't gotten hurt at TCU, he's had a sensational year as well. So no shortage of great playmakers at wide receiver. No shortage of more intel coming up here in just a few minutes. Backload. You talked about the cannibalization of this conference. We're going to find out so much more. And I think that's one of the big reasons why the College Football Playoff Committee took the approach they did in week 1. They didn't have to put anybody into the top 4 the first week because they didn't want to deal with people saying, well, they haven't played anybody yet. So why not wait till they play somebody before you start to make some determinations? And that is why, and I can't remember if it was you or you, Taylor, who decided that maybe Oklahoma State sneaks in because they had that moment to prove that they had a big game and they were able to win a big marquee game. And so this is going to be so interesting because keep in mind, Oklahoma's still out there. Everybody in the preseason was talking about Baylor and TCU. Nobody was talking about Oklahoma State, and there's still no conference championship game.
Well, that's why I keep saying it's so incomplete. The rankings you'll see tonight, the rankings we saw last week, it doesn't mean I don't want to have them because I love shows like this and the show that I do, and I love the discussion about college football. We are in the playoff right now. November college football is unlike any other American sport, and I love it. But what we're going to see in the next couple of weeks will give us such a clearer picture.
Stay tuned. To be determined. That's the best way to
I want Oklahoma or State and Baylor, somebody to win out in the Pac-12. I think they got teams that deserve to be in those places. That back-end schedule is tough, but I want to see somebody rise up and take a stronghold of what they're doing in that conference.
They have to be undefeated, though, to make it.
No doubt. I agree.
Ooh.
I agree.
Better come up with 2 more teams. All right, let's get you caught up to date with their Nissan Heisman.
A Heisman resume, and they've got a great defense.
See, I think their receivers are the most underrated core in the country. Nobody talks about Michael Thomas, and all he does is run by people and catch 50-50 balls. I mean, he's been spectacular. Anybody else got a beef with coaches?
I don't have any problem with his. Listen, it's an incomplete task right now to try to figure out who
small
these teams
resume,
are.
yeah.
It is a small resume. All right, Anthony, you show us yours.
Yeah, you know, when I looked at this, they're obviously at number 1. You have to have Clemson. They're playing the best offensively and defensively. Ohio State. J.T. Barrett now back in the mix. I only think this offense is going to raise moving forward, and they're going to be a challenge. 3 Oklahoma State, and the reason why is, to me, I had TCU very high coming out of this with the opposed to what the CFP had it last week. I think that's a real win. The way they handled them, I think they jump Alabama. And the reason why is Alabama stays at 4 for me is because, yeah, the LSU was a big win. LSU, I agree with being 2 in the country. But, you know, when you talk about their win, you know, I look at that loss as being a hurdle for them, in my opinion, in my eyes. And that matchup between them and LSU was like a superior matchup. It worked in their favor. There was no – LSU's game plan to me was just, it didn't help.
There was no adjustment to the game.
Exactly. You fell into their hands, and I just thought they made it easy for Alabama. And then my last two, Iowa, I'm going to give them some respect, okay?
You go with Iowa.
Listen, it's hard to win games, all right? They play a tough style. They're believing right now. Their offensive and defensive line is as physical as any I've seen.
And they don't have Drew
in college. Exactly. So, and you look at them, and Baylor, to me, just get your signature win like you're talking about, and I'll move them up into the picture. But they have some time to kind of hang around in the
Where are you going to get that signature win?
I like Iowa, but I agree with you. I don't think they're the tough, hard pale. Yeah, exactly. But if they get on a field with a Baylor or some of those other teams, I'm not sure how they're going to stop people.
Iowa needs to keep Anthony Becht away from campus because Florida was dominating the turnover battle every week until Anthony did their game last week. Iowa dominates the turnover battle every single week. One of the smartest teams in the country.
Well, I got a quick story, and we've told this before. When our crew broadcasted the Iowa Northwestern game, we were talking to Kirk Ferentz before the game, and he said, "You know what? I think we're pretty good. I don't really know how good we are." He said, "But we don't screw it up." He goes, "But I go back to a few years ago, and we were really good." And I can remember sitting in, talking to our coaches in the staff room, saying, "You know what, guys? We
is number one because I think on a neutral field they would beat anyone with J.T. Barrett at quarterback. Clemson and Deshaun Watson have had an outstanding year. In the last month, they have played better than anyone. I've got Baylor at number 3 because they have consistently won every game. Yes, they haven't played anybody, but they've cruised to victory every single week, including last week. That score was not as close as it looked. Alabama's at number 4, best one-loss team in the country. And then I have Oklahoma State and Stanford. I want to put Oklahoma State in the top 4 with my man Anthony here, but the way they beat Texas Tech, thankfully Texas can't kick an extra point. West Virginia, Kansas State.
Right.
All these close calls, I can't forget about that. If Oklahoma State goes on and they beat Baylor and Oklahoma, fine, they'll earn their way in. But
no Notre Dame, no Golden Dome or love?
I got Notre Dame right at. They got them 7.
You're 7. Okay.
They only asked me for 6.
Lucky number 7.
They only asked me for 6.
He conveniently has them at 7 where it's not on the screen, right? All right, let me give you my top 6 here. Really, the exact same as Coach Bellatti's here, just in a slightly different order. I kept Clemson at number 1, put Alabama to number 2, just because of the dominant fashion in which they won the football game. I do have Notre Dame in it at number 4. I think they're continuing to watch Deshaun Kaiser's development and how productive he has been. When you consider the injuries that they've had and had to replace people with, thank goodness they haven't lost William Fuller. So I got Notre Dame in there. Ohio State, I think, is continuing to get better. They're going to get right back on track offensively, I think, with J.T. Barrett. And then Baylor, Oklahoma State. My only concern, I would have Stanford. I'd be right there with you on Stanford. I'm just so concerned about how thin they are in their defensive front 7. When we broadcasted their game against Washington 2 weeks ago, every player that was in their front 3 or 4 that was listed as a starter was also listed as the backup at another position along the front. They just don't have a lot of bodies right now. And if somehow Oregon runs them ragged and gets their tongues dragging, that's my concern.
So you believe that 2 teams in the top 4 should have a loss that should be in the top 4? I'll give you Alabama, and I love the fact that you guys put Alabama at 4 also. Here's the thing with Alabama, I'm going to say, and Notre Dame's going to get teed up with some of their games moving forward, and their resume is building.
Right.
Alabama's got the 1 loss. We talked about that. Yeah. But you talked about Iowa going against the Oklahoma States and the Well, what about Alabama going against those teams? What about Alabama going against a Clemson offense or an Ohio State offense, which we saw last year? Those teams are going to spread out. They're not going to let 7 big, strong, top-tier NFL caliber defensive guys be in the box. I mean, who does that? I mean,
last week, you looked at Oklahoma State and what they had done this year. Very narrow win against Texas, and the Texas punter had to shank a punt really to help them out a little bit there. They got the benefit of a couple of shaky calls against Texas and against Kansas State in a very close game in that game as well. So they're 14th ranked, and we're all thinking because of what they've done, yeah, 14th is probably about right. They jump all the way to 4 because of this 1 win. Now, it's impressive, but still, to go all the way up 10 spots.
Look, that's the thing about this committee, which I think is a good thing. There is human nature involved, and you will overreact to things that you just saw on the field. And even though I think it would be an overreaction, I think it's deserved. And I think they've been waiting for a game to take place in the Big 12 between 2 good teams and see which one rises to the top. I think that's why Oklahoma State will make it.
Danny, don't forget, TCU started this year at number 2, and they've gone the other way. So I think in the eyes of the committee and the eyes of everyone, TCU is still a quality win, a major quality win. So I think Oklahoma State following a little bit of the Ohio State path from a year ago.
Given TCU's injury situation, they've been getting healthier and getting better here over the last couple of weeks. It's probably viewed as an even greater win now than it would be even a month ago. Here are the results. from our Twitter vote. And, man, really close right here between Baylor and Notre Dame.
Listens to us.
Oklahoma State just edging it out. And I think these two guys agree that we'll probably see Oklahoma State in that number 4 spot. Now, you may listen to Danny, but you should definitely listen to Paul. He showed us the way last week, prior to the first release of the rankings. Take a listen. On the other side, Derrick Henry, who you see here, number 1 in the recent ESPN Heismanology poll, thanks to Joe Tess, who provided this for us, is hot off the presses. So Derrick Henry's night in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night catapulted him to the number 1 spot. You don't even see Trevon Boykin on this list right now. I want to get to Corey Coleman here in a little bit, but Paul, our Heismanology and Vegas odds, which are vis-a-vis what the public thinks, by the way, as they try and get them right in the middle, are they overblowing one game, one day in terms of what happened on Saturday?
I don't think so, Chris, because he had such a bad game. Now, you can blame it on anyone you want, but ultimately he is the one in the spotlight. It was one of the biggest games of the year in college football, and he laid an egg. So we're in November now. Where are we supposed to think? And I do think Arkansas is very important for him Saturday night. That's a team that shut him down as well last year. But I don't know if Leonard Fournette is going to have another stage where he can get the attention of the nation back on his back.
Yeah, I think this really hurt his chances. I mean, I'm with you, Paul. If I was a Heisman voter, I would look at how do you do on the biggest stage versus the best competition. And it wasn't even like he had, 87, 95 yards. It was 31 yards. It was abysmal. He put up no statistics. You were completely shut down. And granted, you're not doing it all by yourself. When a running back, you need help. But he didn't break one long run, which again, I think Bama deserves some credit there. But I mean, I think Fournette's Heisman chances. I think his name was pretty much etched. His first name was on the trophy, and that's been erased now. Now he can get it back on there if he finishes strong, because the bottom line, it is a statistical award. But I think it definitely took a hit.
Danny, the problem is that he doesn't have a game like Derrick Henry is going to have. Everywhere Henry goes now, he'll be on the national stage, including the possibility of an SEC championship game on the final week. And Fournette, you almost felt sorry for him watching it. He was so bad. And until Derrick Henry fumbled the ball, he had nothing. I think he had 18 or 19 yards. He was the story of that game, how poorly he played.
We do not have time to get to Corey Coleman, but I do want to at one point in time, because
he deserves it.
He's helping his freshman quarterback out immensely, which is also
Christian
important.
McCaffrey deserves it too.
All right, we'll get to him at some point too. Plenty to get to here on college.